In this video, I'll show you how to add princess seams or darts onto the back of a top. Adding darts is an excellent way to take in a top and provide shape to the garment. They can be added just about anywhere on a garment and be shaped like a triangle, fisheye, or a diamond. However you pinch out the darts of the garment will help you determine what shape and size is needed for the correct fit. For these instructions, I'll be showing you how to take out a pleat in the back of a garment. Start by pinching out and using safety pins to pin out the desired darts or seams as evenly as you can on either side of the body. Don't agonize over it, you'll be able to adjust it later. Next, have the client remove the shirt and make or use a measurement chart to note the amounts that need to be taken in. First, I'll start out with the vertical measurements that go down from the yoke to the waist of an approximation of where the pins are. And then I will take the horizontal measurements on the left and right side of the body. After you do each side, then you will take an average amount and figure out how to make the darts look even. If you have a client that has a really uneven body due to scoliosis or an injury, then you can take it out at different amounts on each side of the body. Also note that you're going to be able to decide whether you average the two measurements or you take the higher measurement or the lower measurement. Depending on what type of fit the client wants, whether that's tight or loose, you'll get to determine what that's going to be. After you've taken the measurements from the left and the right side, jot down the average that you'll be using for each of the vertical measurements and each of the horizontal measurements. Next, remove the safety pins after you are sure that you have all of the information. And in this case, I'm going to be removing the pleats from the yoke at the top, and I'm going to be incorporating those back into the garment. So I'm unpicking the seam on the front and the back of the yoke so that that pleat is free, and I'll do that on the left and right side. Next, I'm going to pin in the ditch. That means pinning on the seams of either side of the garment in order to find the center of the back. This is a great way to make sure that your darts are even and spaced in a way that's going to look appealing to you and your customer. After you've done that, I'm going to be finding where I would like to put the dart placement, and I make sure that it's going to be perpendicular to the floor. I'm also going to be measuring from the side seam to make sure that my dart is going to be the same distance away from the side seam. This gets a little bit tricky once you get up into the armhole, but after you have found a good placement of where the dart or the pleat is going to go, you can press that seam down so that it stays in place. And next, we're going to start measuring those vertical measurements. Starting from the top, I'm going to be marking 2 inches, 6 inches, 10, 14, 17, and 18, which is going to be my vanishing point. After I've done that, I will take the horizontal measurements and mark away from the turn of the cloth where I've pressed it so that I'm taking out the correct amount evenly on either side. Then once I get to that last one, that's going to be where the dart ends. Note that you will not be back stitching when you stitch this part of the dart. Also, instead of that 1/2 inch measurement at the top, I'm going to incorporate the pleat into this dart / princess seam. And so I will draw my line so that it goes all the way up into the yoke. Repeat this process on the other side of the garment using pins if needed. Next, you can head over to your sewing machine and using an appropriate color and size of thread, begin this seam, in this case with a back stitch, and stitch all the way down the line. Now, if you're doing just a dart, you are not going to back stitch at all. You're going to leave a nice long thread tail at the beginning and the end of your seam. But because I'm incorporating the pleat into the yoke as a part of the seam / dart, then I back stitched at the beginning. But at the end of the seam, I'm going to go all the way to the edge of the fabric. And then as I am cutting my thread tails, I'm going to make sure to give myself at least 4 inches. Next, I'm going to tie a double knot at the bottom of the darts, and then I will clip the thread down to about 1/2 inch. Make sure not to clip your thread too close to it, otherwise it will come out. You want to leave a little bit of those tails hanging loose. After that, I like to use a ham over the dart in order to smooth the seam so that it's not pointy. And then you're going to be pressing your darts whichever way makes the most sense. I started by pressing these towards the side seams and then realized that the pleats would really need to be pressed the opposite direction in order to work. So just make sure that you're being consistent. Once you've pressed the inside of the garment, make sure that you always press the outside of the garment as well. And then if you have any seams that need to be restitched back up, you can do so. So here I'm going to be pinning in the ditch of the yoke seam, and I'm going to make sure that I'm catching enough of the yoke on the other side so that that seam is totally incorporated. When this garment was originally made, they used something called the burrito method so that you don't see that stitching or that seam there. That's really difficult to replicate, and so I'm just going to go ahead and use an edge foot here in order to top stitch the seam so that it is incorporated in the yoke, and I'll begin and end with the back stitch and clip my threads. After you've completed this alteration, make sure that you give it a good press, have the client or yourself try on the garment and see if it fits. If not, you can go back to the drawing board, and I hope this helped you alter a shirt.